Hi, Mark here, and welcome to this week's Pond Tip. This week I want to talk a little bit about salt, adding salt to your pond, or using it to help treat common problems with your fish. Now, last week we introduced you or provided you with a spring startup checklist for your pond, and this was very well received, and I'm happy to hear that. But one of the questions that came up regarding salt or adding salt to your pond was something that I think led to a bit of confusion. We gave an estimate, a suggestion on adding 1 pound of salt per 100 gallons of water, and some folks thought that this sounded like a pretty high amount of salt. And I wanted to go through a couple things today and talk to you about where salt is useful, why you would add it to a pond, and just some suggestions regarding that. So in terms of the dosage, 100 pounds or 1 pound per 100 gallons may sound like a lot, but the goal when you're using salt is to get a level of about 0.1% or 0.2% might be on the high end. Just as an example, a commercial pond salt product that you'll see used on the marketplace, their instructions suggest using 730 grams of salt for 100 gallons. Now this actually equates out to 1.6 pounds of salt. So our recommendation of using about a pound is actually quite conservative. It's closer to the suggestion that you might use if you have plants that are sensitive to salt. This is actually closer to about 8/10 of a pound. But generally speaking, the goal is to try to get the salt or salinity of the pond water around 0.1%, 0.1%. So why is salt useful? Well, it does help maintain electrolyte balance for the fish. Their skin tends to stay healthier. It helps with their slime coating. The slime coating is actually a reaction to the salt in the water, but having the slime coating does protect against certain diseases that they might encounter. And overall, it's just very beneficial to have a certain amount of salt in the water. Also, salt is very useful in a higher concentration bath to treat parasitic infections, skin issues, things like that, where you would actually shoot for about a 2% salt bath. As an example, you would use 730 grams of salt in 10 gallons of water. Now this is very concentrated, and you wouldn't leave the fish in there very long, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at the most, no longer than 10 minutes. But it is a way to treat for certain infections of the skin, parasites, things like that. You would then take the fish out, put it right back in the pond water. By the way, you would use pond water in this small treatment tub as well, not tap water or commercial water. So, but you can treat for short-term time periods to help clean up some issues that a fish might be having, and you can do that usually once every 24 hours as needed. Now, the thing about salt that I want to mention too is that this isn't an absolute necessity. This is something that you may want to check and add if needed. It can help with your fish health, but like all things, I'm not a big fan of adding more to the pond necessarily or just for the sake of doing it. Ideally, you should test the salinity of your pond water and shoot for a reading of about 0.1%, maybe up to 0.2%, but no higher than that in most cases. And you could use a testing kit to do this. They're getting harder to find on the market. There is some digital meters, and I've provided some information below on that I like to use. Not every salinity meter will work for your purposes because they don't read in small enough increments, but the digital one that I'm mentioning below does do that. It is used for fish ponds, and so it may be beneficial to you. It's good to test the salt content of your pond water before you add anything. If you do decide to add salt, obviously you can use the commercial grade pond salt, but you don't have to. You can actually use water softener salt. As long as it doesn't have any additives, rust preventatives, things like that, it's fine to use in your pond. You don't use iodinized salt. Iodine is not necessarily useful for fish, and so you wouldn't use that. But something like a salt, water softener salt would be inexpensive and easy to obtain for most folks, and that would be certainly usable. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's or places like that. So I hope that this helps in regards to our discussion on salt and my suggestion of possibly adding it as your spring startup. I'll mention too that there isn't a lot of information validating the use of salt to deal with algae problems. That isn't necessarily what we would use it for. It's generally for the benefit of the fish. It does help detoxify nitrites to a certain extent, so it can help in that regard, and it is worth maintaining the recommended level of 0.1% in your pond for overall health and vitality of your fish. But when used appropriately and as necessary, salt can be a useful tool. So I hope that helps. Hope it clears up a few things. And we'll see you again soon on our Pond Tips videos. Until next time, please take the time to enjoy your pond.